Hello everyone, this is Sasha with the LTRC. Thank you for joining us for using automation to drive efficiency with our sponsor Tabs3 Software as part of the LTRC Industry Insights series held every Wednesday. Our speaker today is Daniel Woodworth. Daniel is a product management specialist for Tabs3 Software. He has multiple years experience assisting clients and consultants with their billing, accounting, and practice management software needs, as well as designing new features to better equip them for the future. Daniel enjoys collaborating closely with end users to address key pain points and believes that the best software should always be designed to empower the user. Thank you all for joining us. We'll now begin the webinar.
Tabs3 Software has been providing industry-leading billing, practice management, and legal accounting software to law firms across the country now for over 40 years. During today's webinar, we'll be discussing automation and how it can be used to increase productivity, produce better client outcomes, and reduce costs for your firm. I'll be keeping the discussion pretty high level, but throughout the webinar, I will be using a number of examples that come directly from Tabs3 Software. I want you to know ahead of time that the solutions that I'm presenting will be demonstrated in Tabs3 Software, but they will likely apply to any practice management software that you're already using in your daily business practices. You can kind of think of the solutions presented today as just brainstorming how you might implement automation at your own firm. So with that disclaimer, let's go ahead and dive into things here. So we've all undoubtedly heard the phrase doing more with less, especially in today's business environment. The statement doing more with less is all about optimizing resources efficiently to cut costs and deliver better outcomes for clients. But doing more with less is really difficult, especially when we already feel like our resources are stretched so thin. I love this graphic here. So following the financial crash in 2008 and really escalating every year ever since that point, we've been asked to achieve nothing short of what I refer to as budgeting miracles. We're really tasked with just leaving no stone unturned when it comes to reducing unnecessary expenses. And this pressure has really come from just a number of things. The first of those is lofty consumer demands. So according to a recent Deloitte Insights research poll, consumers are just demanding more and better outcomes than ever, especially from the service industry. However, those same customers and clients are more capricious and less loyal than ever too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. The second pressure to succeed is coming from heightened commoditization of the legal industry. So in other words, as you know, competition is stiff out there. There are dozens of practices, sometimes just within walking distance of your building, all that are trying to beat you out to take your clients. And so there's that pressure of heightened commoditization in the legal industry. The third pressure to succeed comes from increased specialization, which is really a response to number two. So as a response to that commoditization, we're really trying to do the opposite. We're trying to make ourselves the matter experts in our given fields, which is a great thing. It can lead to better client outcomes, but on the other side of things, it can lead to higher costs. The fourth pressure to succeed does come from kind of the doing more with less portion, which is that we're being asked to do these things all at a lower price point for the consumer. So truly budgets are being strained in every industry. So it's not just legal partners asking their office managers to cut costs wherever they can. It's every business across the board trying to streamline their business practices, which ultimately then trickles down to the legal industry as well. And of course, we couldn't talk about pressures to succeed in today's business climate without talking about COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has just really continued to stretch budgets even further. It's reduced top line revenue for firms, and it's made it difficult to achieve that high level of performance in client outcomes. We don't have kind of that face-to-face interaction that we're so used to. So all of these pressures kind of combined together just set up this confounding equation that we're being asked to solve in today's business climate. So on one hand, we have fewer resources in the form of fewer man hours, fewer budgeted funds for different activities, and we also have less face-to-face time as a result of COVID, which has made it more difficult for some paperwork processing and meeting with clients. With those two things, we're being asked to deliver better outcomes to match those increased consumer demands. So again, truly consumer expectations of what they expect from their legal teams just continue to rise at really an extraordinary rate. And we're also being asked to innovate to stay ahead of the competition. So with robust technologies that are available today, ever increasing specializations and more advanced consumer needs, every process at our firm has to be perfect. Um, so taking into account both of the sides of this equation, how do we stay ahead? How can we possibly meet the demands of the future with our ever shrinking resources? And kind of the key to this is automation. So when I say automation, what comes to mind for you? For me, it's kind of this fully autonomous factory that you can see in this picture here. So we have machines and forklifts and supply belts that are all working together in unmanned unison to produce just precision products more quickly than a human could with fewer errors. So in legal tech, it's really no different than that. Automated processes are just computer programs that work in unmanned unison to deliver better, more efficient outcomes and produce fewer errors than we could along the way. So you might be wondering, why automate? Why even consider this in the first place? So we've already talked about a few of these, but just to really drive it home here, the first is that, or the first reason to automate is that automation facilitates a better division of labor. So it allows you to do the things that a computer simply can't, such as making complex decisions, kind of living in that gray area that you've been trained so well to do. Um, at the same time, then we get the ability to leave kind of the monotonous tasks, those really simple black and white issues to a computer to figure out and to handle on its own. So ultimately, this just drives those higher efficiencies. The second reason to automate is done correctly, automation can drastically reduce errors and man hours at the same time. So think about a factory that needs to produce some sort of widget that has a specific dimension. You wouldn't expect a worker to every single time they want to produce one of these widgets to grab a level, a measuring tape, and then manually cut every single one of these pieces down to size. You'd be way more successful if you just programmed a machine to take care of those simple steps every single time. So automation can truly reduce human error just by removing a lot of those manual entry steps. The third reason to automate is that it's already all around us. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you have actually already implemented some automation strategies in your business practice. And most legal experts believe that automation is truly here to stay. According to an Altman Wheels 2020 Law Firms in Transition survey, the vast majority of law firm leaders now believe that greater price competition, the commoditization of legal work, smart tech, and new types of competition are a permanent fixture for the legal landscape. Roughly 70% of these same respondents also indicated that they believe the pace of technological change in the legal industry will just continue to increase. So automation is already present in the industry, and it's just going to increase in its presence. The fourth reason to automate is that automation makes us better equipped to deal with future uncertainty. So it kind of future proofs our firms. Um, the thought behind this is that automation allows us to be better equipped to face future challenges. So when demand for your services slows down or picks up, you don't have to hire more employees or change your overhead or alter your daily routines just to meet that new level of demand. So really, your automated processes just kind of handle things for you. There's no second thought about it. And the final reason to automate is kind of a question for you to ask yourself: so why not? Automation is, again, already working for many firms, so why not yours? According to that same Altman Wheels survey, about half of the firms that have implemented some sort of re-engineering automation process have seen major performance and efficiency improvements. But only roughly 20% of the law firms surveyed said that they have actually already implemented automation practices. So I kind of digging into this, the question is asked, why aren't more firms adopting automation practices? And there are a number of reasons, but one of the key things that came up from this survey was that for some firms, it might just be difficult to see the incentives of automating when things are already going well for the firm. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, the US and international economies were in a pretty good state, and legal revenues were really at an all-time high. But as we experienced with COVID-19, revenues are not certain over time. So though it might be difficult to see the incentives for automation now, we really have to be forward thinking in our thought process here. So now that we understand some of the benefits to automation, let's move on and talk about a couple of specific examples where automation can really bolster productivity and efficiency. Again, I'm going to be using Tabs3 software as an example here, but I just want everyone to know that, that I'm going to try to focus on kind of the general principles that are going to mostly apply to any practice management software that you're already using. All right, so the first example that I want to discuss is automating your document assembly process. So every law practice, every attorney has document templates that get reused over and over again. And if you aren't already doing this, I definitely encourage you to start doing so. So these automated documents could come in a number of different forms. So a couple of examples here, you might have a client intake form that's standard every single time a new client joins your firm or retains your firm that they have to fill out and send back to you. If you work constantly in contracts, you might have some sort of standard contract document that you're sending to your clients. Another example of a routine document might be for establishing trusts, for mass claims, business formations, powers of attorney, on and on and on. There are dozens or hundreds of examples of documents that are really standardized that your firm probably is just reusing over and over again. So again, kind of when thinking about this list of documents, the only thing that's changing from document to document is the client information that's going into the document. So kind of the bones of the document, the structure of it are really staying the same. Even if you are using a template, you're probably still manually changing each bit of that client information every single time you run the document. And there is just a much better way to do this. Computer software can automatically fill in that information, that the pieces that need to change each time you produce said document, all while keeping that kind of that core structure intact. At Tabs3 Software, we call this document assembly, and I'm going to walk you through just a quick example here. So let's say that we're working with a standard issue form here. And this would be for selling shares of stock at a regular interval. So we have our document. It's all set up and it's ready to go, but the problem is it's been prepared for a previous client that we were working with. So we would need to go through, manually change out our agent and the number of shares of stock and the value of the shares, et cetera. So we could go through and do it that way. But what we really want is to develop a system that is going to automatically pull in all of that information for us from our practice management system. So to do that, regardless of the software that you're using, the first step is going to be to make a template. So basically, the screenshots here are kind of overwhelming, but know that it's a very simple process. Basically, what we'll do in whatever software application you use is you go through and you'd pick those key pieces of client information that do change from document to document, and you convert them over to what a computer knows as variables. So basically, what that does is it tells the software that every time you run that document, that piece of information should change and it should reflect the client that you're running the document for. So on the left-hand side here, you can see this selected document assembly variable. So this is a screenshot from Tabs3 Software, but you have the ability to add in, client full names and addresses and city and state. There are dozens or hundreds of variables that you can add in to really customize these documents to fine tune exactly and get the information exactly the way you want it. And for all software applications, these variables will pull directly from your practice management software. So it's information that you already have entered into your system and you don't have to think twice about it. So now when it's actually time to create this document, to produce it for this user or for this client, all we actually have to do is this really simple step-through process. So basically, we would open up the template, we would select our specific matter or our client, and then we would enter in any information that the system doesn't already know. So in this case, it's prompting us to enter in the number of shares that the client wants to sell. Although this information could also be automated technically, depending on the process that you use. So once we're done kind of stepping through that, the software is going to automatically pull in all of our client data, and it automatically fills in this document for us. So there's no manual entry, no repetition of entering in client information. It's just done for you. Kind of the last or the next great part about most document automation programs is that they'll automatically save the document so that it's associated for you with the specific matter or client. So it's really easy to find that later on. In Tabs3 Software here on the right-hand side, you see we have this send email button. So what you could do is save this document, run it through the document assembly, and then you could just quickly, with one tap of a button, email it out to your client or to whoever needs to receive it. So that's kind of the overview of document assembly. And just for a quick summary, there's 3 standard steps that you'll follow no matter what application you use. So first, you're going to decide on the form you want to automate. Again, make sure that this is kind of a standardized form. The second thing is you'll create a template. So you'll insert variables for those pieces of information that do change each time you run the document. And the third thing, just automate it and save money, save time, save yourself some headaches. So the next example of automation that I want to discuss is automating calendaring. So regardless of the area of law that you practice, you probably find that some of your daily business practices do follow a very specific sequence of events. So in some cases, these might be strict deadlines, like in the case of a trial attorney, or they might be more looser guidelines. For example, maybe for a series of events to follow up with a new client that joins your firm. But regardless of the situation, most software providers have a really easy way of setting up what we at Tabs3 Software call a calendar plan. So basically what this does is it brings in a key date, such as a trial date or the date that a client retained the firm, and it automatically adds calendar events based on that day. So I just want to walk you through a quick example here in Tabs3 Software. Okay, so again, regardless of your software provider, you'll always start by creating some sort of template. So in this example, we're going to create a calendar plan for an upcoming trial that will automatically remind me when certain events have to occur before the trial. So in my example here, you can see, so again, we're creating a trial plan here. So my first item on my template would be my trial date. So that occurs at day 0 or 0D that you can see here in this interval column. So then based on that day, I can add other events to my template here, and I will specify an interval so that ultimately when I actually fulfill this template, when I run this template for a specific client, the system will automatically create calendar events based on those intervals. So let's say, for example, that I need to exchange an expert witness list 70 days before my trial date. So you can see in this screenshot here, I have the ability to specify my interval. It can be 70 days or weeks or months before that initial trial date. And most systems will allow you to quite a bit of flexibility in the scheduling. So obviously the courts are going to be closed on specific days. Law firms are going to be closed on specific days. So I might want to ignore weekends and holidays and only use business days, for example. So most software applications will allow for that sort of functionality and flexibility. So once I have all of my events scheduled, my template is ready to go here. This is actually kind of the example, or a screenshot from the final product. But as you can see, I have roughly half a dozen items on my template here. So when it's actually time to implement the calendar plan or run the calendar plan, it's as simple as just clicking a button and the software is going to automatically schedule all of the events as specified by the template. So it's going to use that start date as the key date, and it's going to adjust all of those other event dates by their assigned intervals. What's really great about using your practice management software to do this is that these events will most likely automatically sync up with whatever calendaring system you're already using. So if that's Outlook or Google Calendar or some other solution. And then these templates can just be reused over and over again. So once you set up a calendar plan template, you can make those repetitive processes so much simpler to schedule every time. All right, so we've talked about two different examples of automation in calendaring and document assembly, but I kind of want to change gears here and really take this one step further. Um, so there are hundreds of examples of individual processes that you can automate, but that will all cut out dozens of steps and hours of processing time, but you still have to manually tell the software that you say want to create that series of events or that you want to produce that document. Um, so this is where what we at Tabs3 Software call workflows come in handy. So workflows can kind of be thought of as if this, then that statements. So for example, if event A happens, then we want the software to do B. Another great way to think of workflows is kind of as a way of automating automation. So it's, again, kind of taking things a step further here. So I just want to show you an example in Tabs3 Software just to demonstrate how powerful a workflow can be. And just a note, your software provider might call workflows something else. So let's say, for example, that every time you onboard a client, you have 3 specific steps that you have to follow. So the first step might be you have to create a new processing fee just for onboarding that client and the costs involved with that. The second step is to create a series of calendar records to follow up with that client at regular intervals. And then maybe the third thing that you need to do is send the client an onboarding document that they have to sign and then return to you. So with a workflow, we can actually automate this entire process so that you don't have to do any of those things individually. It just automatically perform for you. So what we would do here, as you can see in the screenshot, is we tell our system that whenever a new client is added, so whenever a new client record is added, we're going to perform these 3 actions down here. So we're going to create a new fee, we're going to create a couple of new calendar records, and then we're going to start that Word document assembly. So then whenever a user actually goes in and saves a new client, we would just automatically run through all of those actions. You can see here in Tabs3 Software that it does prompt you if you want to run that new client onboarding process as workflow. What's really great about workflows is that you can nest automation within automation. So for example, the document that we need to send out, that client onboarding document, is a standard document that we've already created a document assembly template for. So when this new client gets added, that document assembly process is just going to boot right up. It's going to fill in any data that we already know, and it's going to get that saved associated with the client so that we can send it out really quickly. So some programs even will automatically attach and email out that document for you. I do just want to note too that even beyond, the scope of today's webinar is mostly on legal tech, but this goes really beyond just your practice management software. There are dozens of providers out there of this type of functionality that I just wanted to mention, and you can really automate anything in your daily life. So there are companies like Zapier, if this then that, and if you're an iPhone user, Siri shortcuts are just 3 great examples of things that I use in my everyday life. Basically, these different services can connect different cloud application providers so that you can set up rules and workflows to really accomplish anything that you could possibly want. So for example, you could set up a rule to automatically email you a daily digest of the time that you entered into a certain cloud application. You could create another rule to enter in a new spreadsheet entry for every phone call that you log on your iPhone. So really the shortcuts and for the technology that's out there are really endless. And it goes, again, beyond your daily legal job and kind of into your personal life too. So today, kind of coming to the conclusion of the webinar here, we've covered documents, calendaring, and workflows. You may have noticed that each of our automatable processes do have a couple of key components. So these are things to look for when deciding what to automate at your firm. So the first thing is that all automatable processes have to be standardized. So these are things that do not change from client to client. Kind of those bones all stay the same every time you do them. The only thing that changes is that client information piece. The second thing is that automatable processes don't require humans. So computers work really well in the black and white decision making. They don't work well in the gray area as of now. And the third thing is that Automatable processes all fit into your existing firm workflow. So you really don't want to have to go out and make a bunch of big changes in order to support automation. Ideally, it'll just fit within your existing flow. So on the flip side of things, while I do love automation, and I think that a lot of firms can really stand to benefit from some great automated practices, there are definitely a number of items that we should not automate. So the first thing to look out for is if the item is not costly. So in other words, does this actually need to be automated? Perhaps there's something that perhaps there's an activity that your firm only does once every 10 years. Maybe you never work in contracts, but there's this one time that you have to send out a contract to a client. It would make way more sense to just fill in that one contract that one time rather than spend the time to create a template, because really templating is only beneficial when you're running multiple iterations of that document over and over again. So if a process is not costly, it's probably not worth automating. The second thing is, does it require kind of that extra level of personalization? So again, I said that computers work really well in the black and white decision making, but not in the gray area. So let's say that you just met with a large client and you need to send them a thank you note or something like that. That's probably best, those needs are best met by an actual human rather than a computer. And the last thing to look out for when deciding what not to automate is if it's going to be just too much effort for your firm to adapt to that new process. So there's some decision making that goes in here, but because sometimes it is worth it to change the process of your firm, but in some cases there's just too much effort to automate a certain process. So that concludes the presentation portion of this webinar. If you are interested in learning more about Tabs3 software, I really encourage you to take a look. We have a link here that you could visit. So thank you so much for joining myself and the Tabs3 team for this Industry Insights webinar. Please feel free to visit tabs3.com for more information on our services and newest initiatives. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Sasha.
Great. So I think that's going to conclude our Q&A session. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Tabs3 Software, and everyone for attending our webinar today as part of the LTRC Industry Insights series. If anyone's curious about future webinars, you can check out the ABA LTRC page or follow our Twitter at LTRC. One more time, thank you, Daniel, for presenting today. It was a great presentation. We will now be concluding the webinar. Bye, everyone.